Ready? Okay.
Yep.
So the first thing on my list is my lights and reflectors. The lights up on top, those on the mirrors, the reflector right here, the light bulbs right here. They're all clean, clear, not cracked. None are loose, none are missing, none are obstructed. They're all the proper color, which is amber, and they're securely mounted. Same is true here, clean, clear, not cracked, not obstructed. Securely mounted, proper color, which is amber. The bulbs are not cracked, loose, or missing at all. They too are securely connected, proper color, which is amber. Headlights here are clean, clear, not cracked or obstructed, and they're securely mounted. Mirrors, a mirror right here and a mirror up here. The metal is not bent, broken, or cracked. There's no broken or missing welds. There's no missing nuts or bolts. No missing screws up here. The housing here is not damaged, bent, broken, or cracked. Same true up here. The housing is not damaged, bent, broken, or cracked at all. The lenses right here and the lenses right here are all clean, clear, not cracked. None are loose, none are missing, and they're not obstructed. They're securely mounted. That's good. So now I'm going to do the engine compartment, starting with the engine oil. This yellow dipstick right here. So I'm talking to the part right now, okay? This is my engine oil. I'm going to check this while the engine's off. I'm going to remove the dipstick, wipe it clean, reinsert it, pull it back out. It should be above the add line. If not, I'm going to add oil up here. The cap's not loose or missing. It's not cracked or leaking. It's securely mounted. Coolant. I'm going to check the coolant here while the engine's off. It should be above this add line and below the max line up here. If it's below the add line, I'm going to add coolant up here. The cap's not loose or missing. It's not cracked or leaking up there. The reservoir's not cracked or leaking. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. This electrical line is securely connected. There's no cut or exposed wires or any sign of corrosion. There's no loose or missing hose clamp. There's no abrasion, bulge, or cuts. It's not cracked or leaking. This is securely mounted. All right. So power steering fluid. This is my power steering fluid right here. I can check this while the engine's off. It should be above the cold line and below the hot line right here. If it's below this cold line, I'm going to add power steering fluid here while the engine's running. The cap is not loose or missing. It's also not cracked or leaking. There's no missing bolts right here, any gaps up here at all. The reservoir's not damaged, bent, broken, or cracked or leaking at all. There's no loose or missing hose clamp. There's no abrasion, bulge, or cuts. It's not cracked or leaking. This metal line is not bent, broken, or cracked or leaking. It's securely connected. All of this is securely mounted. So the rule is, if it's got liquid in it, I gotta say, I'm gonna look for liquid leaks. If it's got air in it, I'm gonna listen for air leaks. Okay? So water pump. I can just explain where it is approximately and say, okay, well, it's that silver pulley right here at the bottom of the drive belt, or the serpentine belt, bottom of the V of the drive belt. That's my water pump. My water pump is not loose. It's not damaged. It's not bent, broken, or cracked. There's no missing nuts or bolts. It's not leaking. It's also belt driven. The belt's not cut, torn, or frayed, and it's the proper tension. When pushed by hand, there's no more than 3/4 inch of play. Alternator. This is my alternator right here. The alternator's not loose. It's not damaged. It's not bent, broken, or cracked. There's no missing nuts or bolts. The electrical lines are securely connected. There's no cut or exposed wires or any sign of corrosion. My alternator here is belt driven. The belt's not cut, torn, or frayed, and it's the proper tension. When pushed by hand, there's no more than 3/4 inch of play. My alternator here is securely mounted. Oh, by the way, if I missed not saying the water pump was securely mounted, it too is securely mounted. If I thought I missed it, I say it right away. I don't let it linger, just say it. If I'm going through this whole truck being a stuttering Tim, do it. So it's better, if it's up here, say it. Just get it out. And if you say it and say it and say it and say it again, you'll get credit for one, not the 10 other times you said it. Okay? All right? All right. So leaks and hoses. I'm going to inspect up here. I want to make sure all those electrical lines are securely tied up and all the hoses are securely tied up. All right? I'm going to smell for any burnt plastic or burnt rubber, which might indicate one of these lines are loose. There's a loose hose. So none of my hoses are loose at all. There's no loose or missing hose clamps. There's no abrasions, bulges, cuts. It's not cracked or leaking at all. These electrical lines are securely tied up right here. There's no cut or exposed wires or any sign of corrosion. They too are securely connected. I'm going to check for leaks up here by the fill and by the top of the motor. At the front of the motor up here. I'm going to look for leaks up here by the radiator, around here and around here. I'm going to look for leaks or dripping or puddling on the ground at all. I don't see any down here. I'm going to look for any dripping or puddling down this way and also over here. I'm looking for any puddling or dripping over this way. And up here, I'm going to look for any liquid leaks up here. This yellow line, there's liquid in this line. And the blue and the red line, there's air in those lines. So I'm gonna listen for air leaks and look for liquid leaks up here. All these are securely connected, they're not loose at all. This line going into the air compressor right here, it's not bent, broken, or cracked, or leaking at all. I'm gonna listen for air leaks right here. The two is securely connected to the air compressor. Now, here's my air compressor. The air compressor is gear driven. It's not loose. It's not bent, broken, or cracked. There's no missing nuts or bolts. The gasket there is not worn through, cracked, or leaking. I'm gonna look for liquid leaks and listen for any air leaks. My air compressor there is securely mounted. Master cylinder, we don't have one. We don't have automatic transmission fluid, so we don't have to worry about it, so we just skip it. Steering box and hoses. This is my steering box, and these are my hoses. The steering box is not loose. Down here, there's no missing bolts or any gaps down here. This is not damaged, bent, broken, or cracked at all. It's also not leaking up here by the gasket. There's no loose, missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. No loose or missing hose clamps. These are all, the hoses here are securely connected. There's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts, they're not cracked or leaking. My hoses and air steering box are securely mounted. Steering linkage. This is my steering shaft. This is my pitman arm, and this is my drag link. My steering shaft is straight. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. Up here, there's no missing caps or components or parts at all. It's also properly greased. You have the coupling. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. I'm gonna twist the steering shaft by hand. There should be no more than 10 degrees of play when I twist that by hand. The pitman arm is not loose. It's not damaged, bent, broken, or cracked. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. It's also properly greased right here. The castle or crown nut's in place. It's not broken, loose, or damaged at all. There's no shiny exposed threads. The cotter key's in place. The drag link too is straight. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. It's also properly greased. The castle or crown nut's in place. It's not broken, loose, cracked, or missing. The cotter key's there too as well. My steering linkage here is all securely mounted. It's a lot of stuff that you have to say, but if you don't say it, you'll miss something. You didn't say enough. You're gonna be back here a third time, which is not gonna happen because you're gonna watch this video, okay? So tires, I'm gonna check the tires up here to make sure that these tires up here, they're the same type and size of tire. I don't want mismatched types or sizes, all right? I'm gonna make sure that they're not recapped because my steer tires cannot be recapped at all right? I'm gonna check the tread depth. The tread depth has to be at least 4/32 deep, evenly worn all the way around. There's no flat spots. I'm gonna check the sidewalls to make sure there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They're not cracked or leaking. I'm gonna listen for air leaks. I'm gonna check for proper inflation. I'm gonna read the spec on the tire, and right here with the pressure gauge, I'll check it. The valve stem is not loose. It's not cracked or leaking. The dust cap's in place. These tires here are securely mounted. Rims. Things like the frame of the truck, the drums, brake drums, and rims can't have any sign of repair or legal welds. So I'm gonna inspect this rim inside and out to make sure there's no sign of repair or legal welds. They're not dented, bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no gap between the tire and the rim right here. My tire is evenly sealed all the way around. Lug nuts. I'm gonna remove all these chrome caps right here. I'm gonna inspect all those lug nuts. None of them are loose or missing. None of them are broken or cracked. There's no shiny exposed threads. There's no gap between the lug nut and the rim or rust trails. All these lug nuts here are securely mounted. Hub oil seal. I'm gonna inspect the hub oil seal on the inside of the axle and the outside of the axle here. By the way, this is a grease seal on the outside. It's not an oil seal. So I'm gonna inspect that seal around here to make sure it's not worn through, cracked, or leaking at all. There's no missing bolts. The cap there is not damaged, bent, broken, or cracked at all. It's securely mounted. If I had to add grease, I would remove this cap and had it right here. So, springs and shocks. These are my springs right here. This is my shock right here. The springs are all straight. They're not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. There's no loose or missing springs. They're not crisscrossing or scissoring one another. The shock here is straight. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all, or leaking at all. The rubber bushing on the top and the bottom is not worn through, torn, loose, or missing at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads up here or any gaps up here. My shock and my springs are securely mounted. U-bolts. I have a U-bolt right here and a U-bolt right here. The U-bolts, they're not twisted or sagging at all. There's no gap between the hanger up here and the U-bolt up here. These are not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged on top at all. Down below, there's no missing nuts down there below. None of them are cracked or broken or loose at all. There's no shiny exposed threads. My U-bolts up here are securely mounted. Spring mounts. I have a spring mount up here and I'm gonna follow that spring all the way back here to the rear. I have one here in the rear, right behind the def tank. So that spring mounts, you can just stay right over here. The spring mount is straight, it's not damaged, it's not bent, broken, or cracked. There's no gap up here, there's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. Also the metal bushing's in place, it's not worn through, cracked, loose, or missing. My spring mount up here in the front, and also the one in the back. securely mounted. So brake hoses are lines. This is my brake hose right here. This is my ABS line right here. Brake hose right here, ABS line right here. But the brake hose is securely connected to the supply line and also the brake chamber up here. It's not dangling there loose. There's no cut or exposed wires or any sign of, there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. It's not cracked or leaking. I'm gonna listen for air leaks up here. And then the brake line right here is not loose. It's not damaged. It's securely tied up. There's no cut or exposed wires or any sign of corrosion. My ABS line and brake hose are securely mounted. Brake chamber. All right. The brake chamber right here has 3 parts to it. I have a front, and I have a back, and I have a C-clamp. The C-clamp is not loose. It's not twisted or sagging. There's no gap between the brake chamber ends. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. The brake chamber ends are not dented, bent, broken, or cracked at all. There's no gap up here at all. My brake chamber here is securely mounted. So I say it, and I point to it, and I talk about it as I'm going along. So I've said this like 5,000 different ways, and sometimes I mess up too, but I try to correct myself right away. Okay, slack adjuster and push rod. So this is my slack adjuster right here, and here's my push rod right here. My slack adjuster is straight. It's not loose. It's also properly greased. It's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no missing pins or cotter keys up here. My push rod goes into that brake chamber straight. It too is not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. When I pull this push rod by hand, there should be no more than 1 inch of play, and it should be even on both sides. My push rod and slack adjuster are securely mounted. Brake drums and linings. I'm going to inspect the outside of the brake drum right here to make sure there's no sign of repair or legal welds. It's not broken or cracked or damaged at all. I'm going to inspect the inside for any sign of repair or legal welds. It also has to be dry on the inside of the drum, no oil or grease. Also, there's no cracks, no discoloration or warping at all. The brake lining is at least 1/4 inch thick. It's evenly worn all the way around. None of it's broken, cracked, loose, or missing. They too are dry, no oil or grease. My brake linings and drum are securely mounted. Take care of that. Keep it going. Because we don't know which way you're going to get. You've been through it twice, so who knows? You might start at the engine compartment. All right, we're going to do this right here. So if you stand right over here. So doors and mirrors. This is my door, this is my mirror. The outside latch works. The inside latch works. My door is not loose or sagging. The hinges here, they're not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no gap up here at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts. The door here is securely mounted. The door seal is in place. It's not worn through, cracked, loose, missing, torn at all. It's securely mounted. My door securely latches. It's flush with the truck. The mirror's right here. The mirror right here, the mirror right here. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. Shiny exposed threads. The housings here are not damaged, bent, broken, or cracked, or loose at all. The lenses here are all clean here, not cracked, none are loose, none are missing. My mirrors here are securely mounted. So, and after that, I do the fuel tank and cap. This is my fuel tank, and this is the cap right here. My fuel tank is not dented, bent, broken, or cracked. There's no broken or missing welds at all. Anywhere around here, up here, around here. My fuel tank is secure with these 2 metal straps right here and right here. They're not loose or missing at all. They're not rusted through at all. They're not bent, broken, or cracked at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts. The rubber seal is in place right here, with the right here. I don't have metal rubbing on metal. I'm going to look for leaks up here. I want to make sure I don't see any sign of leaks up here at all. There's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They're not cracked or leaking. There's no, this is securely connected. It's not loose. There's no cut or exposed wires or any sign of corrosion. There's no leaking around the cap here. Now I'm going to check the cap. I'm going to loosen that cap to make sure that gas seal is in place. The gas seal is not worn through, cracked, loose, or missing. The safety chain's in place. My fuel cap and fuel tank are securely mounted. This guy's weird. You gotta say all that? You do. All right, so then steps. All right. So we don't have a catwalk up on our truck, but we have these steps. These steps are not, they're not twisted or sagging. They're not dragging on the ground at all. They're properly elevated. All right, they're also all level. I got even traction on all these steps. Also, they're not rusted through. They're not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no missing bolts at all. And there's no foreign debris such as snow or ice, my lunchbox, my coat, or anything to cause a trip hazard. My steps here are securely mounted. Battery box. My battery box right here. The battery box is not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts at all. The cap here is in place. It's not cracked, loose, or damaged at all. There's no missing straps right here and here. I'm going to remove this cap, inspect the 2 batteries that are inside of there. Those batteries are not loose. They're not cracked or leaking. There's no missing nuts or bolts. The electrical lines are securely connected. There's no cut or exposed wires or any sign of corrosion. My batteries and battery box are securely mounted. All right, lights and reflectors. We'll talk about this light up here, and those lights up here, and the lights right here. 2 light bulbs are here, and the light and reflector right here. Those running lights are clearance lights. They're all clean, clear, not cracked, none are loose, none are missing. They're all the proper color, which is amber. None are obstructed, and they're they're all securely mounted. The bulbs here are not loose, bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. They're securely mounted. This reflector here is clean, clear, not cracked or obstructed. Proper color, which is amber, also securely mounted. The headlights there are not loose, they're not damaged at all, they're not obstructed at all, they're not cracked, they're all clean and clear, and securely mounted. So I'm just rattling that stuff out of my head. So you can do that too. So it changes. I got a scripted version of it too. You can read that one if you want. So, all right. So then after that, I'm going to do the drive shaft underneath the vehicle. This is my drive shaft right here. The drive shaft is straight from the engine back to the rear drive axle back here. It's not twisted or sagging at all. It's also not loose. It's not damaged, bent, broken, or cracked at all. Here at the couplings, there's no missing caps or components. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. It's also properly greased up here and also back here. That centerpiece in the middle, that's called a hanger bearing. That hanger bearing is not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts at all at the hanger bearing at all. The two is securely mounted. And because this drive shaft spins, I want to make sure that all these wires and hoses are securely tied up to the inside of the frame here. I don't want any of those loose to get tangled up in this thing. My drive shaft here is securely mounted. I have to say that for instance. I don't want any of that stuff hanging there loose because it spins. If it spins, it's going to rip out one of these hoses. No problem. Okay. Yep. So then exhaust system. So this is my exhaust system right here, from the muffler to the exhaust pipe bed. I'm going to check to make sure that the exhaust pipe here extends beyond the reach of the cab. I'm going to also look for any gaps. I don't want to see any cracks. I don't want to see it rusted through at all. I don't want to see any sign of any black soot. The metal here is not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts. The brackets here are all in place. None of them are loose or missing at all. My exhaust system here is securely mounted. I got to mention leaks. Okay. Yep. And let's talk about the metal and stuff. Okay. And then frame. I'm going to inspect the outside member right here and right here, and the cross members right here, and back here. If you accidentally touch this as a cross member, this is called a hanger bracket. It's not a cross member, but this is, and that is. Okay. So don't worry about touching this one if you do. All right, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. So my frame here is straight. It's not twisted or sagging. It's also not rusted through anywhere. There's no sign of repair or illegal welds on the frame at all. It's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or any noticeable gaps anywhere at all. I didn't mention it's not rusted through at all. There's no sign of repair or illegal welds. Also, the cross members, they're all straight. They're not twisted or sagging. They're not sitting diagonally. There's no gap at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. The cross members here and frame are all securely mounted. Okay. Tires and such. So the tires back here, these tires back here can be recapped. These are not. If they were recapped, I'm going to look for any buckling or a gap or any sign that this tread is releasing from the case of the tire. It is not. Also, the tread depth is at least 2/32 deep, evenly worn all the way around. There's no flat spots. I'm going to make sure that I have the same type and size of tire back here. I don't want mismatched sizes or types of tires. I'm going to inspect the sidewalls to make sure there's no abrasions, bulges, cuts, not cracked or leaking at all. Then I'm going to read the spec of the tire to make sure they're properly inflated. With the pressure gauge back here, I'll check it. The valve stem's not loose. It's not cracked or leaking. The dust cap's in place. The tires back here are securely mounted. Rims. I'm going to check the rims inside and out to make sure there's no sign of repair or illegal welds. They're not dented, bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. Also, there's no gap between the tire and the rim right up here. The tire is evenly sealed all the way around. The lug nuts, I'm going to remove all those dust caps to make sure that none of my lug nuts are loose or missing. None of them are broken or cracked. There's no shiny exposed threads. There's no gap between the lug nut and the rim or any rust trails. All these lug nuts here are securely mounted. Hub oil seal. I'm going to inspect the hub oil seal both on the inside of the axle and the outside here. Can't really see it on the inside, but I point to it anyway. So I'm going to make sure that that seal's in place. It's not leaking anywhere. I don't see any dripping or leaking on the inside of this rim at all. Also, this housing here is not dented, bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads up here. Also, there's no gaps anywhere that are noticeable. Everything up here is securely mounted. If I had to add grease, I'd remove this cap and add it right here. Spacers are bud spacing. We don't have metal spacers. I'm gonna say that. We don't have metal spacers, but we have bud spacing. So I'm gonna come down here and I wanna make sure that those rims are tight together. There's no gap between the two rims at all right? I have even spacing on the top with the ground down here. My tires are not rubbing or touching at all, and there's no foreign debris such as a rock, a nail, or anything to cause any damage. Right. So then after that, then I talk about the springs, shocks, and airbags. These are my springs right here. Well, springs are straight. They're not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. None of them are loose or missing at all. They're not crisscrossing or scissoring one another at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts. They're securely mounted. The shocks are back here. These are my shocks back here. Shocks too are straight. They're not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no missing bushings on the top and the bottom down. They're not worn through, torn, loose, or missing. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads or any gaps at all. If I didn't mention it, they're not cracked or leaking at all. My shocks here are securely mounted. Airbags. I'm going to treat these much like a tire. So I'm going to inspect the outside of the sidewall of the tire to make, or the airbag here, to make sure there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. It's not cracked or leaking. I'm going to listen for air leaks out here. Also, there's no gap between the airbag mount up here and down there. My airbags here are also properly inflated. One's not under or overinflated. My airbags back here are securely mounted. Okay. Alright, I'm already getting tired of this, so I'm going to start working out again. U-bolts. I have a U-bolt up here and a U-bolt right here. Alright? These U-bolts, they're not twisted or sagging. There's no gap between the U-bolt and the hanger up here. Also, these are not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all, twisted or sagging at all. I'm going to go crawl underneath or inspect them right down here. The bolts or the nuts down here are not cracked, loose, broken, or loose. They're all tight. None of them are loose or missing. There's no shiny exposed threads. U-bolts here are securely mounted. So I do mess up too, by the way. Today I'm not having a good day on this, but maybe tomorrow will be better. All right, so then after that, then I do the spring and air mounts. So the spring mount is right here. The spring mount here is straight, it's not damaged, it's not dented, bent, broken, or cracked. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. There's no gap up here at all. This metal bushing's in place. It's not worn through, torn, loose, or missing at all. The spring mount up here in the front is securely mounted. The airbag mounts back here and down here. They're not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no gap between the airbag mount and the frame up here. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads or any gaps at all. My airbag mount up here and down here are all securely mounted. All right, so then after that, then I'll do brake hoses or lines back here. So as you go back to the trailer, this is what the brake chambers and hoses look like. So I have two brake hoses that go inside the brake chamber in the center of the brake chamber right here, and also to the supply line up here. These governors up here and up here. These hoses right here, they're not loose at all. There's no abrasions, bulges, cuts, they're not cracked or leaking at all. I'm gonna listen for any air leaks up here on these hoses. Also this ABS line is securely tied up. It's not dangling or loose to get caught up in the truck, the ground, or anything. There's no cut or exposed wires or any sign of corrosion. My ABS line and brake hoses are securely mounted. Brake chamber. This is my brake chamber right here. I have a front here and I have a back and I have the C-clamp right here. The C-clamp on these brake chambers are already near the push rod end or the slack adjuster end, so they're going to be right here. This top cap is a press fit cap. It's not a C-clamp. So the C-clamp right here is not loose, it's not twisted or sagging, it's not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. There's no gap between the brake chamber ends at all. They're not dented, bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. Also, there's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads down here at all. The brake chamber here is securely mounted. Slack adjuster. This is my slack adjuster right here. My slack adjuster is straight, it's not loose, it's not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no missing pins or cotter keys at all. Also, it's properly greased. The push rod back here, for me to check the push rod back here, I'm gonna block or chock the tires. Then I'm going to release the yellow valve or the parking brake. Then I can check these. They should be going that brake chamber straight. They shouldn't be bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There should be no more than 1 inch of play when pulled by hand, and it should be even on both sides. My push rod and slack adjuster are securely mounted. All right, so then drums and linings. Here's my drum right here. I'm going to inspect the outside of the drum to make sure the outside of the drum, there's no sign of repair or illegal welds at all. It's not broken or cracked or damaged at all on the outside. I'm going to inspect the inside here to make sure there's no sign of repair or illegal welds on the inside. Also want to make sure it's dry on the inside of that brake lining. There's no oil or grease on the inside of the brake drum. There's no discoloration or warping or any cracks at all. Also, the brake lining is at least 1/4 inch thick. It's evenly worn all the way around. None of it's loose or missing. They too are dry, no oil or grease. My brake linings here and drum are securely mounted. So the key things here, you have to mention that the brake linings are at least 1/4 inch thick and they're evenly worn all the way around. None of it's loose or missing. They have to be dry, no oil or grease. Right, and the inside of the drum has to be dry, no oil or grease. All right, so then so doors are lifts, we don't have to worry about that, but we have splash guards right here. So right here. Don't get too nerdy about these. These mud flaps are splash guards. They're not dragging or sagging on the ground at all. None of them are loose or missing. They're not torn, cracked at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts. The splash guards back here are securely mounted. Lights and reflectors. I'm going to check this light right here. All this DOT approved tape back here. And the lights right here and right here. That DOT approved tape covers it 100% here in the rear of my truck. It's not obstructed. None of it's loose or peeling. It's securely mounted. The light, the reflector right here, and the light and reflectors right here, they're all clean, clear, not cracked, none are loose, none are missing. None of them are obstructed. They're all the proper color back here, which is red. You don't have to talk about the reverse lights, but you can say the reverse lights here are all securely connected. They're not obstructed, they're all clean, clear, not cracked, not loose, not missing. They too are securely mounted. That takes care of that. So then now we talk about the tractor. So once you get done with one of your sign boxes, we'll come right over here. So the tractor here, I'm going to check the air lines right here and the electrical line right here. This electrical line here, there's no cut. There's no cutter exposed to wires at all. It's securely connected at the safety latch up here. The safety latch is not loose or missing, broken or cracked or damaged at all. The bracket here is not bent, broken or cracked. There's no missing nuts or bolts at all. My electrical line here is securely connected. The hoses here, there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They're not cracked or leaking. I'm going to listen for air leaks up here. Also, you have the glad hands right here and right here. They're securely connected. They're not twisted or sagging. They're not bent, broken, or cracked or leaking at all. I'm going to listen for air leaks right here and right here. I also have red to red and blue to blue, which is great. Also, that rubber seal, there's no foreign debris caught in between them. It's not torn, it's not loose or missing, it's not cracked or leaking. I'm going to listen for air leaks right here and also right here. My air hoses right here are securely connected. All these lines right here, there's enough slack for the turn of my trailer. They're not dragging or sagging on the trailer at all, and they're all securely mounted. So I said securely mounted and securely connected a bajillion times. And I'm going to say that, I'm going to say damaged and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to say the word's good, all right? And I'm not going to get complacent. I'm going to say as much as I possibly can because I want them to know that I'm the absolute authority on this truck, some form or way. You'll practice this on your own some way, or just watch this video or whatever you want to do. But try to get it down so you at least can point and say those 3 to 4 things about it. Okay? Right, so then when you're done with that, now we've got the mounting bolts. All these mounting bolts are right here. None of these are loose or missing. They're not broken or cracked. There's no gaps at all between the mounting bolts and the platform and the bracket right here, and the frame right here. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads down below at all. None of them are loose or missing down there at all. And there's also no gaps at all. My mounting bolts here are securely mounted. Platform, this is my platform right here. My platform is not twisted or sagging. It's also not rusted through at all. It's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no gap at all. There's also no broken or missing welds at all. My platform here is securely mounted. Locking jaw. This is my locking jaw right here. I can see it. It's straight. It's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. It's also properly greased. Right now it's secured and locked in the dry position. Release arm and safety latch. This is my release arm right here. We don't have a safety latch. In its place we have a spring tension. That spring is not broken, loose, or damaged at all. Right now this is locked and secured in the dry position. I'm going to pull this out to make sure it's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. And also it's securely mounted. Okay. Skid plate. The skid plate is not twisted or sagging at all. It's not rusted through at all. It's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. It's also properly greased right here and right here. There's no missing pins or cotter keys right here. We don't grease the outside of our skid plate. In its place, we have this poly plate underneath the apron right here. This poly or plastic plate, it's not worn through, it's not cracked, none of it's loose or missing. It's securely mounted. It allows for the safe turn of my trailer. Air and electrics on the inside of the trailer here, on the front of the trailer. These are my air lines right here. The red and the blue is the service line, the red's the emergency line. These lines right here, they're securely tied up to the trailer. They're not dangling here loose to get caught up in the trailer or the truck or anything on the ground. There's no abrasions, bulges, cuts, they're not cracked or leaking at these connection points. They're securely connected. They're not dangling, they're loose. There's no missing nuts or bolts. They're also not cracked or leaking at all. Also, this electrical line is securely tied up to the frame. It's not dangling here loose. There's no cutter exposed wires or any sign of corrosion. It's also connected at its major connection points. My electrical line and air lines here are securely mounted. All right, kingpin. I'm gonna check the kingpin. The kingpin's inside of here. The kingpin is straight. It's not damaged. It's not bent, broken, or cracked at all. Also, the head of the kingpin is not broken or cracked or damaged or missing at all. My kingpin here is securely mounted. Apron. The apron's right here. If the apron's straight, it's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no broken or missing welds at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. My apron here is securely mounted. Now let's talk about the gap. I'm gonna look for a gap or any sign of daylight underneath the apron here and the skid plate right here. If I saw a noticeable gap or any daylight, that would mean that this locking jaw is on the head of the kingpin where it should not be. My locking jaw is around the neck of the kingpin, exactly where it should be. My trailer here is securely mounted or securely connected. Okay. So then trailer now, we'll go to the header board around this way. This is my header board. My header board is straight. It's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no broken or missing welds at all. It's securely mounted and also strong enough for my cargo. Lights and reflectors. Talk about this stuff over here. I'm gonna check this DOT approved tape up here. I wanna make sure it's evenly applied all the way down. None of it's loose or peeling at all. And it covers at least 50% here up on the front and the side of the trailer. Okay? This light here is clean, clear, not cracked, not loose, not missing at all, securely connected. Also the proper color, which is amber, and all my DOT tape is securely mounted. So DOT approved tape up in the front and the sides has to be at least 50%. On the back, it's always at 100%. Okay? So you notice that we actually apply more with the anticipation that we'll lose some of it on the road. That's fine. So that's why we say at least. Okay. Okay. So now landing gear. This is my landing gear right here. Right now, this landing foot is locked up in the dry position. It's not dragging or sagging on the ground at all. This pin is not broken or loose at all. Right now, it's locked and secured in the dry position. The metal here is not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. I want to check to make sure there's no foreign debris or anything caught up in between these two, the foot and the housing right here. I want to be able to safely land this trailer when I need to. Like I said, the metal's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. It's also properly greased up here. This is straight, not bent, broken, or cracked at all. The handle's stowed away in the dry position. My landing gear here is securely mounted. So you need to talk about it for instance there. So when I need to safely land this trailer, I want to make sure there's nothing there, such as ice or snow, rope, anything else that would get caught up in that, so I can safely land this trailer if I have to. Okay. So you can phrase it however you want to. It can just be one thing and just say it, say it for instance. Okay. So then frame and tandem release. You can't release those tandems, they're locked in place. This is my frame of the trailer. The trailer is straight, it's not twisted or sagging at all. Up here on the top, it's not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no broken or missing welds at all. There's no missing deck plates at all. They're not worn through, cracked, loose, or missing. There's no missing screws up there. I'm gonna crawl underneath my trailer to make sure that all those cross members are in place. None of them are bent, broken, or cracked at all. None of them are twisted or sagging at all. There's no broken or missing welds at all. Everything down below is securely mounted and also strong enough for my cargo, and everything here on the top is securely mounted and strong enough for my cargo. So I always say securely mounted and then strong enough for my cargo. Okay, that's on the trailer. Right, so then doors, ties, and lifts. We have these ties. So I have a D-ring over here and one over there. I don't have missing D-rings at all, or ties at all. None of these are bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no broken or missing welds at all. They're all securely mounted and strong enough for my cargo. Lights and reflectors. I'm going to check the side of this trailer here to make sure that I have at least 50% of DOT approved tape back on the side of the trailer. Most of it's there, none of it's loose or peeling at all, none of it's obstructed at all. It's all securely mounted. The light right here and the light right here are clean, clear, not cracked, not loose, none are missing. Proper color up here, which is amber and also securely mounted. The lights back here are clean, clear, not cracked, not loose, none are missing, securely mounted, and also the proper color back here, which is red. If I saw this ABS light on while the truck was on, that would mean I didn't have ABS back here. I'd have to get this trailer serviced, but I still have normal braking. Okay. So then, tires. So I'm gonna check the tire right here and the tire right here. right? These tires can be recapped if they are not. So if they were recapped, I make sure there's no buckling or no sign of this tread giving away from the case of the tire at all. The tread depth is at least 2/32 deep. It's evenly worn all the way around. There's no flat spots. I also have the same type and size of tire. I don't have mismatched sizes and types. Also, I'm going to check the sidewalls to make sure there's no abrasions, bulges, cuts, they're not cracked or leaking. I'm going to listen for air leaks over here and also over here. I'm going to read the spec over here and over here to make sure they're properly inflated. With an air gauge right here and also right there, I would check if the bell stems are not loose, cracked, or missing. The dust caps are in place. And the tires here are securely mounted. Rims. I'm going to check the rim right here and the rim right here. They're not damaged at all. They're not dented, bent, broken, or cracked at all. There's no sign of repair inside and out or any illegal welds at all. There's no gap between the tire and the rim right here and also up here. The tires here and there are evenly sealed all the way around. Right, so then lug nuts. I'm going to check the lug nuts right here and the lug nuts right here. I want to make sure none of them are loose or missing. They're not broken or cracked at all. There's no shiny exposed threads. There's no gap between the lug nut and the rim right here. And there's no rust trails. All these lug nuts here and here are securely mounted. So you can do that, gang it up like that while I'm doing that. Is that what you did for your test? Did you, when you talked about the trailer?
Yeah, I
kind of bunch them together, but point them out and talk about them. That's what this comes in handy. If you don't have this, use that pencil, okay?
So when I do the test, I have to
Point, yeah. You read it out and point to them.
Okay.
Okay? Because I also want to know that you know that what you're talking about, and then you can just talk about them as if they were one unit. But you have to point to them first, okay? Right. So hub oil seals. You know, it's like the hub oil seal on the inside and the outside here, and outside here. I want to make sure I don't see any dripping or any noticeable leaking up and on the inside here. Also, I want to make sure that the housings are not dented, bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. The seals are in place and are worn through, cracked, or leaking at all. I'm going to inspect inside these sight glasses right here and right here to make sure I see oil. If I didn't see any oil inside of here, over here, I'd add oil right here and also right here. My hub oil seals are securely mounted. Okay. I sometimes lose myself in this thing. Springs, shocks, and airbags. We don't have shocks or airbags on this trailer. You're going to say that. We just have springs. The springs up here and the springs back here, they're all straight. None of them are loose or missing. They're not broken or cracked or damaged at all. They're not crisscrossing or scissoring one another. There's no missing nuts or bolts at all. My springs up here and springs back here are securely mounted. U-bolts. I have U-bolts up here on the front axle and also U-bolts here on the back axle. All right? Those U-bolts, they're not twisted or sagging at all. There's no gap between the U-bolt on top and the axle up here. There's no missing nuts down below or shiny exposed threads at all. They're securely mounted up here and also back here. Spring mounts. I have a spring mount up here in the front, one here in the middle, and also one here in the rear. The spring mounts, the brackets here, there's no broken or missing welds at all. They're not dented, bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts at all. I'm going to inspect on the inside of them to make sure those metal bushings are in place. They're not worn through, cracked, loose, or missing at all. My spring mounts up here in the front, also here in the middle, and also here in the rear are all securely mounted. All right, so brake hoses or lines. I would have to crawl underneath this trailer or lift this trailer up to inspect those brake hoses. But I have brake hoses that come into the front brake chamber and also to the rear brake chamber back here. There should be 2 of them that are connected to the center of the brake chamber up here and 2 that are connected back here. Those hoses, they're not loose, they're securely connected. There's no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or cracked or leaking. I'm gonna listen for air leaks up here and also back here. The ABS line, I only have one ABS line. It's up here on the front axle. I do not have an ABS line here in the rear. That ABS line is securely tied up. There's no cut or exposed wires or any sign of corrosion. My ABS line and brake hoses are securely mounted. The brake chamber up here in the front and the brake chamber here at the rear of the axle back here. They're not dented, bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no gap between the brake chamber ends up here and also back here. The C-clamps are in place. They're not twisted or sagging at all. They're not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts or shiny exposed threads. My brake chamber up here and brake chamber back here are securely mounted. Slack adjuster. I have a slack adjuster that's in the front of the axle up here, and a slack adjuster that's in front of the axle back here. Those slack adjusters, they're not loose. They're not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. They're also properly greased. There's no missing pins or cotter keys at all. They're securely mounted up here and also back here. A push rod right here, up in the front of at the front of the axle up here. The front of the axle comes into the brake chamber this way. At the front of the axle back here, or it comes in through the front of the axle to the brake chamber up here. Those push rods right here, I'm gonna block or chock these tires. And then I'm gonna release the red valve. Then I can pull the push rods up here and back here to make sure that there's no more than 1 inch play. They're even on all sides, and also they're not bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all. My push rod and sock adjusters are securely mounted. My brake drum and linings. These are the outside of the brake drum right here and the outside of the brake drum right here. There's no sign of repair or legal welds at all. They're not damaged, bent, broken, or cracked or damaged at all up here or also back here. I'm gonna inspect the inside of the drum to make sure they're dry on the inside of the drum. There's no oil or grease. There's no sign of repair or legal welds on the inside of the drum. There's no cracks, no discoloration or warping. The linings up here and also back here, they're at least 1/4 inch thick. They're evenly worn all the way around. There's no, none of it's loose or missing, none of it's broken or cracked, and they too are dry, no oil or grease. My brake linings and drums are securely mounted. Whew, that's a lot of words.
And these are still the same 1/4 inch, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I said at least 1/4 inch. Did I say that? I said
No,
oh, I'm sorry. They're at least 1/4 inch thick and they're evenly worn all the way around. Yep, the same. I didn't say that, so I do miss things too. So then, rear trailer, doors or lifts. We don't have doors or lifts, but we have these ramps. These ramps right here, these brackets right here, they're not bent, broken, or cracked, or loose, or damaged, or missing at all. There's no missing pins or chains at all. The bracket here, there's no broken or missing welds. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, or damaged at all. There's no missing nuts or bolts right here, or power key over here. The shaft is straight. There's no loose or missing springs right here. They're not broken or cracked or damaged at all. These vertical pieces right here, they're not twisted or sagging at all. There's no broken or missing welds at all, or no missing steps at all. My ramps back here are securely mounted and also strung up in the cargo. All right, lights and reflectors. I have DOT approved tape back here. Covers at least 100% back here in the rear. All of it's evenly applied all the way down. None of it's loose or peeling. None of it's obstructed. It's all securely mounted. Also, those lights are all clean, clear, not cracked, none are loose, none are missing. They're all securely connected, and the proper color back here, which is red. That takes care of it.